The Yulari Empire had once been a force to be reckoned with, a proud and powerful civilization that spanned across dozens of star systems. Their technology was unmatched, their cities glowed with the brilliance of advanced science, and their culture was as old as the stars themselves. But now, a shadow loomed over them, darkening their once promising future. The Gray Sleep, a strange and deadly virus, had begun spreading across their species like wildfire. It started on their largest colony, a beautiful planet named Tellira. The first few cases had been dismissed as minor illnesses, but as weeks passed, the disease grew more deadly, striking with unrelenting speed. Soon, the Yulari found themselves powerless against it. Sarilith, the young queen of the Yulari, watched helplessly as her people suffered. She had ruled for only a few cycles of the moons, inheriting the throne after her mother's sudden death. She had been prepared for the duties of leadership, diplomatic meetings, military strategies, overseeing the prosperity of her empire. But nothing could have prepared her for the sight of her citizens dying in droves, their bodies slowly deteriorating as they fell victim to the disease. The virus didn't kill quickly. It was a slow, agonizing process. At first, the infected became lethargic. Their skin turned pale and ashen, and their once vibrant energy faded into a dullness that made them look like ghosts of their former selves. Then their bodies stopped healing. Minor injuries became deadly, and soon the paralysis set in. Muscles weakened, nerve signals failed, and the victims simply fell into a deep, unending sleep. It wasn't just that they were dying, it was the way they were dying. It was a slow, painful process, and every attempt to find a cure had failed. The Yulari's greatest healers, their most advanced scientists, had tried everything. They had used their best technologies, even tapped into ancient genetic archives, but nothing worked. No medicine, no technology, no treatment had any effect. The virus was too powerful, too insidious. Sarilith stood alone in her grand palace, looking out at the capital city below. The streets that were once filled with laughter, music, and the sound of everyday life were now eerily quiet. The city had become a ghost town, and the few Yulari who remained were either too sick to move or too afraid to leave their homes. She clenched her fists, her heart heavy with grief. The weight of her people's suffering bore down on her, and every night sleep eluded her. How could she be a queen if she could not protect her people? How could she lead if there was no way to save them? Her advisors spoke of retreat, of leaving the planet to preserve what was left of the population. They suggested fleeing to other worlds to hide from the virus until it burned itself out. But Sarilith refused. The Yulari were not a species that ran from problems. They were conquerors, builders, creators. She would not let her people fall into obscurity. In the silence of her palace, she made a decision. If there was no cure to be found within the Yulari Empire, then perhaps the answer lay beyond the stars. Perhaps another civilization had faced something similar and found a solution. She would find it no matter the cost. The queen's decision was bold, risky, and perhaps even foolish. But Sarilith was not one to shy away from danger. Her people had survived countless wars, harsh environments, and disasters. They had thrived against all odds. If anyone could find a cure, it was her, and if anyone could bring her people back from the brink of extinction, it would be her. But where could she turn for help? The Yulari had encountered many other species. Over the centuries, some friendly, some not. She had heard stories of strange beings in distant galaxies, but their records were often unclear or lost in the depths of time. The queen thought back to her history lessons, where her tutors had spoken of ancient species that had once roamed the stars, civilizations that had risen and fallen long before the Yulari had taken their first steps into the cosmos. One name came to mind: humanity. The humans of Earth were a species that had long been ignored by the Yulari. They were primitive in their technology, scattered across a single planet, and lacked the unity that other species had achieved. But what Sarilith had heard about humans was intriguing. Despite their technological limitations, they had survived countless disasters, pandemics, environmental collapse, war, and had always managed to adapt, to find a way to continue. Saralith recalled a report from centuries ago before she was born, when the Yalari had made first contact with humans. At the time, the humans had been seen as weak and chaotic, their biology unpredictable and unstable. Yet there had been something in their genetic makeup that had fascinated the Yalari scientists, something that made them resilient in ways the Yalari could not understand. It was a long shot, but it was all she had left. If the humans had somehow adapted to survive even the most destructive diseases, perhaps their biology held the key to saving her people. The Queen's heart pounded as she made her final decision. She would travel to Earth. She would find the humans and learn from them. She would do whatever it took to save her people, even if it meant putting everything on the line. The next morning, Queen Saralith stood in the heart chamber of her palace, a quiet, sacred room at the top of the tallest spire. From here, she could see the sky slowly turning from deep purple to soft blue as the sun of Yalara rose once more. But the beauty of the dawn could not erase the sadness in her heart. Every hour, more of her people fell into the gray sleep. She had already met with her top scientists, doctors, and advisors. None of them had found a solution. Every treatment failed. Every theory ended in disappointment. Saralith knew she had to look somewhere no one had looked before: the Forbidden Archive. The Forbidden Archive was deep underground, hidden beneath the city. It was built long ago by the first Yalari kings and queens. It held secrets too dangerous or strange for the rest of the empire. Only the ruler of the Yalari had access. Even her advisors were not allowed to enter. Saralith made her way there quietly. No guards followed her. She wore a dark cloak to hide her royal robes. Few people knew she was even awake, and she wanted it that way. She didn't need a crowd, not for this. After passing through long, cold tunnels, she reached a silver door. A glowing circle pulsed at its center. She placed her palm on it. The circle turned gold. The door slid open with a soft hum. Inside, the air was still and cool. Rows of crystal panels lined the walls, each one storing memories, voices, and images from thousands of years ago. The Queen walked slowly, her fingers brushing past the glowing edges. Then she reached the section she was looking for: first contact records. Each record told the story of another species the Yalari had met in their long history, some kind, some hostile, some strange and forgotten. Saralith scanned the names, her eyes moving quickly. Then she found it. A dusty panel flickering slightly. It read, Species 172, Homo sapiens, human. She touched the panel. A soft voice began to speak. Report. First observation of the species known as human, from the planet Earth. Unpredictable biology. Chaotic behavior. Limited technology. Initial contact discouraged due to unstable genetic patterns. No further action taken. Images appeared in the air. Pictures of Earth, of humans laughing, working, fighting storms, building machines, healing the sick. Saralith watched carefully. The humans looked fragile, small compared to other species, but their eyes held something unusual: willpower. Even in danger, even in pain, they didn't stop. She called for a deeper scan. Show medical history. Another voice answered. Scanning available records. Humans have survived hundreds of diseases. Recovered from global infections. Rapid medical development. High immune system diversity. Notably, their DNA shows extreme adaptability. Saralith's eyes widened. This was it. This was the key. Why didn't we study them more? She whispered. The archive answered. Biological instability made integration difficult. Human DNA reacted unpredictably with Yalari cells. Risk level, high. Research halted. The Queen stood silent for a long moment. Then she said firmly, Reactivate the file. Copy all medical data. Prepare for full genetic analysis. Confirmed, the voice replied. She turned and walked back out of the archive, the images of Earth still fresh in her mind. This planet, this species, might hold the cure her people needed. But there was risk. No one had ever tried to combine human DNA with Yulari biology successfully. It had always been considered impossible, dangerous. But now it might be the only hope left. Later that day, Sarilith summoned her most trusted scientist, high geneticist Veylan. "I want you to study something," she said, showing him the human file. "Tell no one else, this is our secret for now." Veylan looked surprised. "Humans, but they were—" "Yes," she interrupted. "They were ignored. But look again. Their DNA is different from ours, but that might be a good thing. The gray sleep only affects Yulari biology. If we can understand what makes humans immune to such rapid cell failure, we may find a solution." Veylan nodded slowly. "It will be difficult. Their DNA is wild. Then we must learn to understand it," she said. That night, alone again in the heart chamber, Sarilith stared up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were living. Their ordinary lives, laughing, struggling, healing, learning. They all had no idea an alien queen was watching them, hoping they held the answer to a question her people could not solve. But Sarilith was no longer afraid. For the first time in weeks, she felt something returning to her chest. Hope. She whispered to the stars, "Earth, I'm coming." The next few days passed in a blur for Queen Sarilith. Her mind was focused entirely on Earth. The more she learned about the humans, the more she realized how unique they were. They had survived wars, plagues, natural disasters, things that would have wiped out most other species. But humans had always found a way to endure. The question was, how? What was it in their biology that allowed them to adapt to any challenge? What made them different from the Yulari? Sarilith's decision was made. She would go to Earth. She would find the answers herself. The Yulari Empire had advanced starships capable of traveling faster than light, but reaching Earth would not be simple. The humans had not yet discovered faster-than-light travel. The journey would take many years if she traveled in a conventional Yulari ship. So Sarilith made a risky choice. She would use a stealth ship, a smaller vessel designed for exploration and quiet observation. The ship was fast and could remain undetected by human technology. A small team of trusted Yulari scientists was assembled, including Veylan, the high geneticist. Together they would travel to Earth with one goal: study the humans up close, understand their biology, and determine if their immune systems could hold the key to saving the Yulari. The journey to Earth took several months, but Sarilith was patient. She had nothing but time. As they neared the blue and green planet, her heart beat faster. She had only seen images of Earth in the archives, but now she would see it with her own eyes. The first thing Sarilith noticed as their ship entered Earth's atmosphere was the smell, the clean, fresh air of a living planet. It was a sharp contrast to the sterile, metallic scent of Yulari ships. Earth's oceans sparkled in the sunlight, and the vast continents seemed to pulse with life. Mountains, forests, rivers, and fields stretched across the surface like a living mosaic. Their ship settled quietly on the surface, far from human civilization, in a remote part of the world known as Alaska. It was a place where few humans lived, which made it the perfect location for their secretive mission. As soon as the ship landed, Sarilith and her team began their work. They wore special suits that disguised their true forms. Yulari had a very different appearance from humans. With large, shimmering eyes, smooth skin that reflected light like a mirror, and long, graceful limbs, they were striking but easily recognizable. Veylan, ever the cautious scientist, was the first to suggest they make contact with humans in a controlled, non-threatening way. "We need to be careful," he said. "Humans are curious. They may not trust us if we appear too suddenly." Sarilith agreed. The last thing they needed was for humans to see them as a threat. They had to approach this cautiously. They decided to send a small group of human scientists a message, a quiet, subtle request for a meeting. The humans they chose were researchers working in the remote outpost of the Arctic. They were studying the environment, Trying to understand Earth's rapidly changing climate, they would not be expected to have contact with any alien species, but Saralith trusted they would be open-minded and scientific enough to listen. Days passed as they waited for a response. Finally, a message came through. It was from Dr. Ana Velasquez, a renowned geneticist who specialized in studying human immunity to various diseases. She accepted their request for a meeting, though she was understandably cautious. The meeting was arranged in a small, isolated cabin. Saralith, disguised in her human-like form, met Dr. Velasquez face to face. The human scientist looked nervous but intrigued. Saralith's first impression was that humans were far more resilient than she had imagined. Dr. Velasquez stood tall, with clear eyes and a sharp mind. There was no fear in her voice, just curiosity. "You're not the first to come from the low stars, are you?" Dr. Velasquez asked after introductions were made. "I've heard rumors, but I never thought I'd meet one of you." Saralith nodded. "No, we are not the first, but we are in need of help. My people, our civilization is dying from a virus. It spreads faster than we can find a cure, and we are running out of time." Dr. Velasquez listened carefully as Saralith explained the situation, including the details of the gray sleep and the lack of any effective treatment. When the Queen mentioned her studies of human DNA, the doctor's expression shifted from curiosity to genuine interest. "You believe we can help you?" Dr. Velasquez asked. Saralith hesitated. "I believe there is something in your biology, your DNA, that might offer a solution. Your immune systems are unlike anything I have seen. Humans have survived countless diseases, things that would have destroyed other species. I think that your resilience may hold the key to saving my people." Dr. Velasquez didn't immediately respond. Instead, she asked, "And what do you want from me?" "Your knowledge," Saralith replied. "Your research. I need you to work with my scientists to help us understand how your immune systems fight disease, how your bodies adapt so quickly to new threats. If we can understand that, perhaps we can reverse the gray sleep." For a long time, there was silence. Finally, Dr. Velasquez spoke. "I've always believed that the key to understanding our species lies in our DNA. It's how we survive, how we evolve. If your people are as advanced as you say, then perhaps I can help you." Saralith smiled, though she knew there was much work ahead. She had found an ally, but this was only the beginning. They would need to study human DNA in ways they never had before, and they would need to keep their mission secret. If the world knew what they were doing, it could change everything. Saralith left the meeting with hope in her heart. The journey was just beginning, but she felt certain that with Dr. Velasquez's help, her people had a chance. The days following the meeting with Dr. Ana Velasquez were filled with intense planning and preparation. Queen Saralith, though relieved to have found an ally in the human scientist, knew that the path ahead would not be easy. They had to move cautiously. Humans were curious and often quick to fear the unknown. One wrong move could lead to panic, and panic could lead to danger. The Yalari team, led by Saralith, spent the next few weeks hidden within the remote outpost where Dr. Velasquez worked. They were careful to maintain their disguises, wearing specialized suits that made them appear as human as possible. They only removed the suits when absolutely necessary, to avoid suspicion. Dr. Velasquez proved to be a quick learner and an invaluable ally. She had no experience working with alien species, but her brilliant mind and years of research into human immunity made her the perfect partner for Saralith's mission. They worked day and night, poring over human genetic data, studying the immune system and examining the virus that plagued the Yalari. Despite the growing connection between Saralith and the human scientist, Saralith knew they couldn't afford to get too close. The Yalari had a strict policy when it came to interacting with other species, first contact protocol. It was designed to prevent situations where one species might exploit another or accidentally trigger a conflict. Saralith was not only the queen of the Yalari, she was also a leader bound by the ancient laws of her people. Yet as the days passed, Saralith couldn't help but admire Dr. Velasquez's determination. She had seen it in the eyes of the human scientist, the same fire that burned in her own heart. They were both driven by the same goal, to save their people. As the work continued, Saralith found herself increasingly torn between her duty as a ruler and her growing trust in Dr. Velasquez. The humans had no idea just how much was at stake. Saralith could not tell them everything. She could not reveal the true depths of the Yulari crisis, nor could she share her people's secret history of past disasters. To do so would risk shaking their belief in the mission. The humans had to trust her, but they also had to believe that they were helping only because it was the right thing to do, not because of the desperation of an alien civilization. Weeks passed, and slowly the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Dr. Velasquez and Valen, Saralith's chief geneticist, worked tirelessly to isolate the gene sequences that allowed humans to fight off so many diseases. There were patterns, but they were hidden deep within the human genome. It was unlike anything Saralith had seen in the Yulari genetic code. The human immune system was a complex and ever-evolving force, capable of adapting to the unknown. At first, the results were encouraging. The Yulari scientists managed to map out a few key genes that showed promise. However, the real breakthrough came when Dr. Velasquez made a discovery that no one had expected. One night, as the team sat together in the small research lab, a breakthrough flashed across the screens. "I think I've found it," Dr. Velasquez said, her voice filled with excitement. Saralith hurried over, her heart racing. "What is it?" Dr. Velasquez pointed to the screen. "It's a gene, one that acts as a natural defense mechanism. It's not just the immune system that fights off the virus. It's the genetic adaptability itself. The human body can evolve its defense mechanisms rapidly within a single lifetime. It's almost like a built-in survival instinct." Saralith leaned in, her eyes scanning the data. This was more than she had hoped for. This could be the key. It wasn't just the immune system, it was the very adaptability of the humans themselves. If they could replicate this gene in the Yulari, it might just reverse the effects of the gray sleep. "We can't be sure without testing," Valen cautioned, his voice calm but serious. "This gene may not work with Yulari biology. It might cause more harm than good." Saralith nodded, understanding the risks. But there was no other choice. The virus was killing them all. She had to try. Dr. Velasquez agreed to help. But she had one condition. "We need to do this carefully," she said. "This is uncharted territory. We can't rush into it without understanding the consequences. The last thing we need is an unintended disaster." Saralith's eyes softened. She had already lost so much, but she knew Dr. Velasquez was right. The testing had to be controlled. They needed to understand exactly how the gene interacted with the Yulari DNA before they moved forward. And so, they set up a new plan. First, they would conduct small-scale tests, using a synthesized version of the gene to observe how it affected Yulari cells. Only when they were confident it would work would they risk introducing it into a living subject. Saralith, despite her determination, knew the danger. Days turned into weeks, and the team worked tirelessly. The Yulari scientists, led by Valen, and the humans, led by Dr. Velasquez, continued to collaborate in secret. The lab buzzed with the constant hum of machines as data flowed freely between them. Saralith often sat quietly, observing from a distance, letting her mind wander to the bigger picture. What if this worked? What if they could save her people? What if Earth could truly become an ally in this fight against extinction? The answer was closer than ever. But as the testing progressed, Saralith grew more and more anxious. Time was running out. The gray sleep was spreading faster than they had anticipated. Every day more Yulari fell ill, their bodies slipping deeper into the virus's grip. Saralith knew the moment was coming. She would have to make a decision that could either save her people or bring even greater disaster. Detour. Next few days would be crucial. The days felt like weeks to Queen Saralith. Every passing moment brought her closer to a choice that would change the future of her people. The gray sleep continued to spread across Yulara, And despite the efforts of the Yulari scientists, the disease showed no signs of slowing down. Every new case felt like a countdown, ticking away the very life of their civilization. Back on Earth, the work in Dr. Velasquez's lab continued. The synthesized human gene had shown promising results in the controlled experiments, though there were still risks. The Yulari scientists were cautious, running each test with extreme care. They knew they were treading on dangerous ground, but Saralath had made it clear. This was their last hope. She had taken to walking the snow-covered landscape outside their hidden base, watching the distant stars overhead. Earth was a world, so different from Yulara, so full of life. The contrast struck her deeply. How could such a young species, so full of potential, have survived so much? It was something Saralath had never fully understood. But now, standing here in the cold silence of Earth's wilderness, she felt a deep respect for humanity. Meanwhile, back at the lab, the team had begun the first phase of the trial, the test of the human gene on a Yulari cell. The results, though still preliminary, were nothing short of astonishing. The Yulari cells, when exposed to the human gene, showed signs of resistance. They were healing faster, adapting to the virus's effects in a way no one had thought possible. But there was still uncertainty. No one knew how it would behave in a full organism. Saralath could hardly wait to hear the results. She was growing desperate. If they didn't act soon, it would be too late. She knew the risks, but she had no choice. Her people were dying. Dr. Velasquez understood the stakes too. One evening, as the last of the research data was being processed, she sat with Saralath in the quiet of the lab. "It's working," she said, her voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "But the human gene is unpredictable. It's so adaptable, but it's also volatile. If we move too quickly, we could cause a reaction we can't control." Saralath listened carefully, her gaze unwavering. "But we've tested it on cells," she replied. "And they're showing signs of healing. We can't wait any longer. We need to act." Dr. Velasquez frowned, looking down at the data sheets. "You're right, but we need a living subject to be sure. I know it's risky, but without it, we're just guessing." "I will volunteer," Saralath said, surprising Dr. Velasquez. "You can't be serious," the doctor responded, clearly shocked. "You're the queen. If anything goes wrong—" "I am the queen," Saralath interrupted. "If I don't take this step, who will? My people need me. This is my responsibility." Dr. Velasquez hesitated. She knew Saralath was right. The queen's leadership was critical, but this was dangerous. "Are you sure?" Saralath nodded firmly. "I've already lost so much. My people are fading. This is the only chance we have." The doctor sighed, knowing there was no convincing the determined queen. "All right. We'll begin the procedure, but we do this carefully, slowly." Next few hours were a blur of preparation. The team had already set up a medical chamber, designed to monitor every aspect of Saralath's condition. They injected her with the synthesized human gene, carefully observing as it began to take effect. For a long while, nothing happened. The room was still, the air thick with anticipation. Saralath's heart raced in her chest. She could feel her body reacting, but it wasn't clear how. The gene was meant to improve her immune system, to make her body resistant to the virus ravaging her people. But would it work on a Yulari? Then, slowly, the effects began to show. At first, there was only a subtle warmth, a tingling sensation, beneath her skin. But as time passed, Saralath could feel a powerful shift inside her. The virus within her body, already weakening her, seemed to lose its grip. Her energy began to return, her strength increasing with each passing moment. She felt alive again, as though her body were pushing back the illness for the first time. But Dr. Velasquez and the Yulari scientists were still cautious. They watched her closely, checking her vital signs, scanning her cells. The results were more than they had hoped for. Saralath's immune system was adapting at an incredible rate. It was working. "This is incredible," Valon said, staring at the monitors in awe. "Her cells are regenerating faster than we've ever seen. The gene is taking hold." Saralath smiled, but it was a small smile, full of caution. They weren't out of danger yet. The process had only just begun. The next few days were critical. Seralith's body was being pushed to its limits, her immune system working overtime to absorb the human gene and adapt it to her own biology. The team continued to monitor her closely, running tests, analyzing data, and adjusting the treatment as needed. The Queen refused to rest, determined to push forward. She had made the decision to save her people, and now she had to see it through. By the end of the week, the change was undeniable. Seralith felt stronger, healthier, and more alert than she had in months. The virus that had once ravaged her body was now a mere memory. Her immune system had successfully adapted, and for the first time in a long while she felt hope. Dr. Velasquez was the first to speak. "It worked. You're immune. The gray sleep won't affect you anymore." Seralith's eyes gleamed with relief. "Then we have a cure." But Dr. Velasquez wasn't so quick to celebrate. "It's not that simple. We need to refine the process, and we need to ensure it works for the rest of your people. But this is the first step." Seralith nodded. "We've taken the first step, but it's only the beginning. I will return to Yalara. We need to spread this cure to everyone." The journey ahead was far from over, but Seralith felt a spark of hope, something she hadn't felt in so long. The gray sleep had claimed so much, but now at last there was a way to fight back, and she would not stop until every last Yalari was saved. Queen Seralith stood on the edge of the small outpost, gazing out at the endless sky above Earth. Her heart raced, filled with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She had returned to Yalara before many times, but this time was different. This time, she carried a hope she had not felt in years. The journey to Earth had been long and dangerous, but the research conducted by Dr. Velasquez and the team had proven successful. The human gene had been synthesized and adapted to her biology. The gray sleep that had plagued the Yalari people for so long had been defeated in her body, and Seralith was now immune. She had witnessed the miracle firsthand. Now she had to bring that miracle home. The Yalari fleet was ready. It had been assembled in secret under Seralith's orders. A small group of ships, stealth vessels, designed to keep the mission covert. The last thing they needed was for the humans to learn of the full extent of the Yalari crisis. Earth's people might not be ready for the truth. Seralith knew the risks. If the cure didn't work on a larger scale, the consequences could be devastating. But she had made a promise, to her people and to herself, that she would not let them die. She would do everything she could to save them. The small fleet of ships left the atmosphere of Earth with minimal disturbance, traveling in silence. The stars outside the windows were distant and cold, a reminder of how isolated she had become in her pursuit of survival. There were no guarantees in this mission, no certainty that the cure would work for everyone. But Seralith believed that if she could bring this hope to her people, they would stand a chance. Days passed as the ships traveled through space, heading back to Yalara. The time felt longer than it should have. Seralith spent most of the journey in isolation, her mind occupied with thoughts of what awaited her. When the fleet finally entered Yalara's orbit, Seralith's heart surged with both fear and determination. Her planet, her people, her legacy lay below. It was a world she had longed to protect, and yet now it was on the brink of collapse. She had come so far, and yet the battle was only just beginning. The fleet made its way toward the royal city of Tanar, the capital of Yalara. It was a place of ancient buildings, towering spires, and vast fields that had once teemed with life. Now the city was quieter than it had ever been. Fewer people walked the streets, and the lights in the windows were dim. The gray sleep had claimed many, and those who remained were weakened, struggling to hold on. Seralith landed her ship in the heart of Tanar, where the royal palace stood. The city streets were eerily silent, the air thick with the weight of the past few months. She could see the signs of the virus on the faces of those still alive: pale skin, hollow eyes, and slow movements. The people of Yalara had once been a vibrant, thriving civilization, but now they seemed like shadows of themselves. The royal palace was no better. As Sarah Leith entered, she was met by her council, a group of trusted advisors who had worked with her throughout her reign. They looked at her with weary eyes, hope long extinguished from their expressions. They had not expected her return, let alone any kind of cure. "My queen," said Councillor Renal, his voice thick with sorrow. "You've returned. But our people, they are fading fast. We've tried everything. The gray sleep, it has taken so much from us." Saralith raised her hand to silence him. She could not bear to hear the pain in his voice. "I have not returned empty-handed, Renal. I have found a cure, and it can save us." The council members exchanged skeptical glances, their faces hard to read. "A cure?" Renal asked, his tone cautious. "How?" Saralith stepped forward, revealing a small vial of liquid she had brought from Earth. It contained the synthesized human gene that had saved her life, the same gene that could save her people. "I am immune now," she said, her voice steady and strong. "This gene will help our people adapt, to fight back against the gray sleep. I've seen it work. I know it can save us." The room fell silent. The council members were stunned, unsure of how to respond. For so long, they had lived with the belief that their civilization was doomed. The virus had spread too quickly, and there had been no hope for a cure. But Saralith's words sparked a glimmer of hope, however small. Finally, Councillor Vikal, the most senior member of the council, spoke up. "You are certain this will work?" he asked, his voice skeptical, yet filled with a tiny spark of hope. Saralith nodded firmly. "I have seen it with my own eyes. The gene will work. It will strengthen our immune systems, allow us to adapt and fight the gray sleep." Renal, still uncertain, stepped forward. "And what of the risks? The humans. They are so different from us. How can we be sure this will not cause more harm?" Saralith's gaze softened. She understood the fear. They had all witnessed the destruction the gray sleep had caused, but she also knew this was their only chance. "We have no time left," Saralith said, her voice filled with urgency. "I ask you all, for the sake of our people, to trust me. We will move carefully, but we cannot waste any more time. The virus will not wait." After a long silence, Vikal finally nodded. "Then let it begin." The team immediately began preparing for the trials. The first test subjects would be volunteers, Yalari, who were still in the early stages of the gray sleep. They would be carefully monitored, and the gene would be introduced slowly into their systems. As the first volunteers lined up, Saralith stood with them, her heart filled with both fear and hope. She had seen the effects of the gray sleep firsthand, and she knew the risks of the treatment. But if this worked, if it saved her people, then this would be the moment their civilization was reborn. The first injection was administered, and the room fell silent as the volunteers lay still, waiting for the effects. Saralith held her breath, praying that this gamble would pay off. It was not just a cure. It was their last hope. Hours passed, and the team watched anxiously. At last, one of the volunteers stirred, opening their eyes. Slowly, they sat up, looking around, as though waking from a long and painful sleep. "Worked," Vikal whispered in disbelief. Saralith's heart swelled with relief. It was only the beginning, but it was enough. The cure had taken hold. The Yalari were not lost. They had a chance to survive. The cure had taken hold. For the first time in many long months, hope bloomed across Yalara like a fragile flower in a barren field. Queen Saralith stood at the heart of the royal city, watching as her people slowly began to heal. The virus that had haunted their world was retreating, pushed back by the strength of the human gene and the determination of her people. But victory was never simple. The path ahead remained difficult. The gray sleep had left deep scars on bodies, on minds, on the spirit of the Yalari. Many families were broken, many friends lost. Rebuilding would take time. Saralith knew this better than anyone. She had felt the pain of loss more than most. Yet standing there, watching the recovery begin, She felt a new strength rising within her people. They were fighters, survivors. The council gathered in the palace once more, this time with faces brightened by hope. Saralith addressed them, her voice steady and strong. "We have taken the first step toward healing our world," she said, "but our work is not finished. The virus may be fading, but it is not yet gone. We must continue to protect our people and rebuild our civilization." "Counselor," Vekal nodded, "the treatment is working well on those early in the infection. We will continue to expand the program carefully." Saralith smiled. "We will also work with our allies. Dr. Velasquez and the humans have given us a gift. We must strengthen our bonds with them." It was true. The relationship between the Yulari and the humans had changed forever. What began as a secret mission had become a partnership based on trust and respect. Saralith knew Earth was no longer just a distant planet. They were allies, connected by hope and survival. The people of Yulara slowly began to return to their cities, their farms, and their lives. The skies, once heavy with sorrow, filled with light and the sounds of new beginnings. Children laughed again, playing in the streets. Gardens bloomed. The Yulari once more looked to the future, not with fear, but with promise. But Saralith also understood that the cure was more than medicine. It was a lesson, one about strength, unity, and the power of understanding others. The humans had taught her that survival was not about isolation, but about connection. It was about reaching out, learning from one another, and working together. One evening, Saralith stood on the balcony of the palace looking up at the stars. Her mind drifted to Dr. Velasquez and the team on Earth. They had saved her life. They had saved her people. She felt a deep gratitude for their courage and kindness. Suddenly, her communicator beeped softly. A message from Earth. "Queen Saralith." Dr. Velasquez's voice came through warm and hopeful. "Our scientists have made new progress. We're developing a stronger vaccine based on your work. Soon, we will share it with you." Saralith smiled. "Thank you, Anna. Together we will protect both our worlds." As she ended the call, Saralith knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with dangers and wonders alike. But she also knew that with allies, with hope, and with courage, her people would thrive. The gray sleep had tried to kill them all, but it had failed. Yulara had survived. And now, a new dawn was rising. Not just for her people, but for all those willing to stand together against the darkness. Queen Saralith closed her eyes, breathing in the cool night air. For the first time in a long time, she felt peace. The battle was far from over, but the future was bright. Her people were alive. Their story was just beginning.